of all, we'd like to thank Susie, and we're very happy that finally you're here in person that we can thank you, because usually we thank you and you're not even around to hear it. But every single Sunday you come early, and we appreciate that you set up, and we eat thanks to you. So
I'm happy to bring next week, but we haven't class next week. I think I'm on the list. I've been planning a long time.
We have class next week?
I think
Yeah,
so.
so
What's next week? Is it? As far as I know.
Sunday, it's class.
23rd.
Okay, let's do it.
I might bring something different, you know, I like to.
Go for it, girl. Please.
I already have an idea.
I'll be gone for 2 weeks.
Okay,
2 Sundays.
I'm sorry. Don't go.
We'll miss you, Lauren.
It's true. All right, so
Thank you.
let's look. This is the Gemara. The holiday of Chanukah is actually special among all Jewish holidays. It has no really designated text for it, right? Every holiday either somehow has some kind of mention. Every traditional Jewish holiday has some mention of Tanakh, or has a Masechta in Gemara or the Talmud named after it. Chanukah has absolutely no record in Tanakh. It has no record. It has no designated Masechta in Talmud. There's, for Purim we have Megillah. For Shabbos we have Shabbos. For Sukkot we have Sukkah. For Rosh Hashanah we have Rosh Hashanah. For Yom Kippur we have Yuma. Right? Every single holiday has, for Pesach we have Pesachim. Every holiday has something. Chanukah has nothing at all. The only material devoted to Chanukah in the Talmud appears in Masechah Shabbos. Actually, you know, on Friday night we daven. Before Mariv, we say a bunch of Mishnayos. It's called Banem Madlikin. Those Mishnayos deal with what candles you're allowed to use to light Shabbos candles with. So in the discussion of those Mishnayos in the Gemara and Shabbos, that's where they discuss also the laws of Chanukah. Because once you're talking about Shabbos candles, you can talk about other kinds of candles that we use for religious purposes, which is Chanukah candles. So this is the primary. The first source is the primary source in the Talmud about Chanukah, and it goes as follows. My Chanukah, what is Chanukah anyhow? And it explains, the Tanu Rabbanan, for the rabbis taught, B'kaf Hei B'Kislev, on the 25th day of Kislev, Yomei de Chanukah Tamnaya Inun. The Chanukah is an 8-day long adventure. Delo lemisbad behon, you're not allowed to give eulogies on Chanukah. Delo lehisanos behon, and you're not allowed to fast on Chanukah. Why can't you give eulogies or fast during these 8 days that start the 25th day of Kislev? Because when the Greeks, actually they were Syrian Greeks, when they came into the hall of the Beis HaMikdash, Timu Kol Hashmanim, they, what do you call it?
Give eulogies?
They timu, they defiled. They defiled all of the oil shebehechal in the entire Beis HaMikdash. Ukeshagavra malchus beis Chashmonai v'natzchum, and when the house of the Chashmonians, the Maccabees, when they were able to be victorious in the battle, badku, they searched v'lo matzu lepalach echad shel Shema. This is the Gemara. This is how we know this whole story. They looked and they only found one cruse of oil. Shahaya munach b'chosamo shel kohen gadol. That still had the seal of the Kohen Gadol. Like if you go into a store and you see, you know, what normally is kosher food, but it's ripped open, you know, it's not sealed, I don't know if you would take it home and trust it, right? This is the same thing. They had oil, but all the seals were broken, all the cruses of oil were defiled, and they couldn't trust any of it. So they only found one cruse that had pure oil that was still sealed. But there was only enough oil in this cruse to light for 1 day. Naasa bonis, there was a miracle done there. V'hedliku mimenu shemona yamim. They were able to light from it for 8 days. Just an interesting anecdote. I mean, this is just my own opinion about this. What does that mean exactly? I think most people's conception is they lit the candles and they stayed lit for 8 days, right? It says v'hedliku bo mimenu shemona yamim. They lit from it. What's from it? What's the subject here?
The oil.
Well, not just the oil. They found something. They found. What did they find? They didn't just find oil on the floor. They found oil in a cruse. They found a cruse of oil. They found a cruse of oil. V'hedliku bo mimenu, v'idliku mimenu, they lit from it, shmona yamim, for 8 days. So in Tanakh, we actually have a precedent for this. Both Eliyahu and Elisha were, under their auspices, a tremendous miracle was done with oil. There were poor women who approached them, and they suggested, take the oil that you have, the one bottle at home, borrow pots and things and containers, and you pour from the jar that you have into all of the pots and containers that you can find. And the oil will keep coming out of the jar. It's like a hose almost, but with no, just a bottle, but like hose would come, you know what I'm saying? It would just keep coming out.
Mm-hmm.
That, in Tanakh, we have that miracle twice. So it seems to me, maybe it's true, maybe they lit the candles and they just stayed lit for 8 days. But maybe what they did is they poured oil into each of the containers of the menorah, and when they finished pouring, they shook the cruse and it was still full. Maybe that was the miracle, that more and more oil came out, right? And they were able to light the candles 8 days consecutively because the thing stayed full for 8 days. So maybe...
At the beginning of there, you talk about the lamentation for the dead is forbidden.
Yeah.
Am I to construe from that just like most Chagim, it terminates Shiva or Sholoshim? It happens here too?
Good. Okay, wait. Well, I'm not going to address that question, but you're on the right track. Exactly the track that I'm going. I just digressed. That was the whole thing with oil was a digression for you guys. This is good. Can we just, one more line. L'shana acheres kavum, so the next year, or another year, they established these days, v'asom yamim tovim, and they made these days a yom tiv, b'halel v'hoda'ah. And what is the yom tiv defined by? Halel and hoda'ah. Saying halel and hoda'ah is saying thank you. Thanks to Hashem. So this is an important question mark. What is the nature of Chanukah insofar as its definition as a Yom Tov? Normally, it's a slightly different question than you asked, but normally on Yom Tov is defined as Yom Shel Simcha, a day that Simcha actually is a mitzvah of Yom Tov, as anyone who probably has been attending Rabbi Millen's shiurim can attest to. And one of the halachic manifestations of Simcha is, what do you think? How do we, in terms of ritual, what do we do to manifest Simcha?
Seudas mitzvah.
Yes. It's not just enough to sit around and say, I'm happy. You know, like that's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to, let's say, have a meal, a festive meal, right? Perhaps bread, perhaps wine, perhaps meat, you know? A festive meal. So the question is, that a lot of poskim address, is there a mitzvah of festive meals on Chanukah? Okay? If it's a Yom Tov, perhaps it should have. But the truth is, the Gemara, if you look carefully, does not define it as having festive meals. The Gemara only says, they made them into Yomim Tovim, the last line of the first source, b'halel v'hoda'ah. In what way? In that we say Hallel and Hoda'ah. We say thank you. Praises and thank yous. Doesn't say anything about festive meals. So the Shulchan Aruch in the second source, the Rambam and Hashbetz have machlokas about this, but the Shulchan Aruch rules in the second source, Ribui hasu'udos shamar bim bahem, on Chanukah, having increased meals that people do on Chanukah, su'udos ha-rishus. These are optional meals. In other words, there's no obligatory meals on Chanukah. They're all optional, the extra meals. Shalo kavum lemishta v'simcha. They did not establish the days of Chanukah for feasting and technical simcha. Obviously, there is simcha on Chanukah, but not like in a technical, ritualistic sense. And the Ramah then adds another layer to this. So the Shulchan Aruch paskins, are there festive meals on Chanukah? Lori?
No.
Say it louder. No. Yeah, no. Just Hallel and Hoda'ah. Just saying Hallel and saying thank you to God. No, it doesn't say anywhere festive meals in the Gemara, therefore there's no festive meals, says the Shulchan Aruch. Now the Ramah, of Moshe Israelis, he wrote a gloss in the Shulchan Aruch, and he says like this, V'yesh omrim, and there are some who say, Sheyesh kitzas mitzvah beruri boi hasu'udos. There might be a small amount, a degree of mitzvah in increasing your festive meals on Chanukah. Mishum de be'osan hayamim haya Chanukas hamizbeach. After all, those days were the Chanukas hamizbeach. That's when they reinitiated the mizbeach, the menorah. They reinitiated the use, the service, the avodah, and the Beis Hamikdash. So, anytime you are able to worship in the Beis Hamikdash is a cause for simcha. So the Rama says there's a little bit of simcha in Chanukah. V'nohagim, so what's the solution? V'nohagim lomar zmiros u'shevachos. So we have the custom to say songs and praises, b'seudos shamar bahem, in the meals that we increase in these days. V'az heve seudas mitzvah. And if you then say songs and praise, then the meals will be seudas mitzvah. Then they will they will go from optional meals to obligatory mitzvah meals. But this needs some explanation. Does it mean that whenever you sing a song at a meal, so therefore it suddenly becomes a mitzvah meal? Like, let's say right now, we're just eating breakfast, right? There's no mitzvah, like we went to the CTA dinner a little while ago, okay? A couple of weeks ago. Normally, if you show up to a very fancy catered meal with a suit, it's because you're going to a wedding, right? At a wedding, usually, we assume, it's kind of a sudas mitzvah. You know, there's a mitzvah of making the couple happy, and afterwards it's a very nice benching, so it's important at a wedding to wash so that you can be really formally part of the meal. But we went to this CTA dinner. I felt like I was at a wedding, but it wasn't a wedding. So it took great pleasure in not washing, because I didn't really want bread. I just wanted more meat, you know. There was turkey, there was some roast beef, there was mashed potatoes. It was like Thanksgiving all over again. Like, it was nice, you know. I didn't want rolls, you know. It wasn't a sudas mitzvah for any reason. But you tell me the choir of CTA, they sing such beautiful songs, right? They sing for Chanukah, they sing very nice Hatikvah, like, maybe that should make it a sudas mitzvah. Why didn't that transform it into obligatory meals, right? So I think that this is what we're going to think about today. And so look at the last source. The last source is the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says something very fascinating, and this is kind of what's going to unpack it for us. Mishnah Berurah comments on, he wrote obviously a very famous commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. It's probably have to. And he says as follows, the last source on the page. Zmiros. So let's say we do have songs at the meals. We have Zmiros. V'hu hadin. It's the same rule, he says. It's the same law with regard to B'nisue bas Talmid Chacham le'am ha'aretz. At the wedding of the daughter of a scholar, a Torah scholar, to an ignoramus. Im omrim shiros. If you say songs, have a su'udas mitzvah. Then it is a su'udah of a mitzvah. Then it is a mitzvah meal. But if you wouldn't say songs, maybe it wouldn't be.
Rabbi, where are they saying ignoramus? Why do they?
He's saying, let's say you have a case where the daughter of a Talmid Chacham, of a Torah scholar, marries someone who has no Torah learning at all.
Oh.
There's not really such a chacham at all.
So they're extreme, right, okay.
So then he says, so how would you transform...
A little derogatory there.
Yeah,
But
Yes.
it's a wedding,
Well,
so
it
of
means
course, it's a
ignorant.
wedding.
Well, somebody translated it that way.
Yeah,
Let's translate it a different way.
let's say...
No, it's a
Torah
good,
learning.
it's a good
Doesn't have any
translation.
Torah learning.
Well, right. It means someone who doesn't know any Torah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But it's a wedding. So it's
But it's a wedding. You say...
a
So
wedding.
here's what I think is going on. I hear what you're saying. You're saying it's a wedding. So there's a mitzvah to make them happy. There's just as any wedding, it should be a mitzvah. So to this, I think what's going on, what he's trying to describe, is basically America over the last 80 years, and it is kind of sad actually. I think what he's saying, more symbolically than specifically, is that at the wedding of the daughter of a Torah scholar to someone who has no Torah learning, I think you see in that almost. What family in America doesn't have like that European grandfather or great grandfather or the old grandparents who knew the traditions, who lived Torah not because they needed to read it in books, but like it was in their bones. They learned it in their homes. It was part of their lives. And in America, we've suffered as a people so much assimilation. All their children marrying like children of the greatest minds. Marrying people who know nothing at all. You know what I'm saying? And that's where the progeny has gone. It's gone from scholarship to ignorance. And I think that there's something, even though it's a wedding, right? You can have life cycles, you can have, but in some sense, it's it's also, there's a twinge of sadness to it, you know? And the solution is singing, is these songs. That's something that I think we have to focus on. And that's, remember, this is all going to bring us back to Chanukah, because Chanukah are days where it's not really a full Yom Tov, right? They're not defined by festive meals, and yet the singing of songs will somehow transform the Chanukah meals into mitzvah meals too. So we're gonna, we're now 2 steps in. Turn the page. This source on top of the page is something that we went over quickly last time, but here we'll see in greater detail. We have more time. Tanu Rabbana. Here's the mitzvah of lighting Chanukah candles. The rabbis taught, mitzvahs Chanukah ner ish ubeso. The basic mitzvah of Chanukah is to have 1 candle for each home, right? On each day of Chanukah, just 1 candle in the entire home. That would suffice as the basic mitzvah of Chanukah. But there are 2 other levels of the mitzvah. Veha mehadrin. This is the hidur mitzvah, the more beautification of the mitzvah. Ner lekol echad ve'echad. According to the second layer of fulfilling this mitzvah, you would have not just 1 candle in the home, 1 candle for each person in the home. Okay? If you have a family of 5 people, that means 5 candles in each. It rings before and after. It's very obnoxious. If you have 5 people, that's 5 candles the first night, 5 the second night, 5 the third night, and so on. Okay? Each night. Veha mehadrin mina mehadrin. Now let's say we're going to beautify the mitzvah even more. So now there's a machlokas. How do you do it? So how do we do it? What's the next level of the mitzvah?
Everybody lights all 8 candles.
So, well, what do you mean 8
candles? Lights the amount of candles for that day.
Okay, Stu. Well, you're quoting one opinion. You know, there's a dissenting view here in the Gemara, and actually it's presented first. Beis Shammai omrim. Beis Shammai says not only does each person light a candle, but each person lights some candle to correspond to the days of the holiday. Beis Shammai omrim. Beis Shammai says Yom Rishon madlik shmona. On the first day you light 8 candles. Mikan ve'elach pochis v'holech. And from there on, you take 1 away. Beis Hillel omrim, and Beis Hillel says, no. It's the opposite. Yom Rishon madlik achas. The first day you light 1 candle. Mikan ve'elach mosif v'holech. And from then on, you keep adding. Okay? Beis Shammai says you start with 8 and you go down. Beis Hillel says you start with 1 and we go up. Obviously, who do we follow?
Noel.
We follow Beis Hillel because we start with 1 and we go up. It could have been the opposite. So what is behind these positions? Why would you think you start with 8 and go down? Why would you start with 1 and go up?
You're increasing the mitzvah in one, and the other one you're decreasing.
Well, why would you decrease a mitzvah?
Well, you're not decreasing. You're saying they're only 7 days later.
So Lori's saying, look, it's not about mitzvah, not mitzvah. It's just one way of counting days. Like when we count normally, like how do you usually count towards something important? Which would make more sense. Let's say you're counting towards your birthday.
Countdown.
Count down. Only 10 days to go, 9 days to go, rocket ship, blast off, right? 8, 7, 6. You don't count up, you count down. So Beis Hillel, he counts up. Okay, that's strange. You pick some day to start with and you count up towards the end. Normally you count down. That's the first opinion of the Gemara. Look. Amar Ula. Yeah, look at Amar in the middle of this first source, on the second page. Amar Ula says, Paligi bat Shreya Morai b'Marava. 2 rabbis in Israel, they argued about what this means. Okay? Rabbi Yossi bar Avin and Rabbi Yossi bar Zveda. Those 2 Rabbi Yossis. Chad Amar, the first guy says, Taima de Beis Shammai. What's the reasoning of Beis Shammai? Just like Lori said. Keneged Yamim Hanichnasim. You count down. You light according to the days that are going. Right? There are 8 days to go, 7 days to go, 6 days to go, 5 days to go. That's how many you light. The time of the Beis Hillel, and the reason of Beis Hillel is exactly corresponding to that. Keneged Yamim Hayotzim. These are the days that, according to the days that have already left. On the first night, you light 1 candle. That's 1 day gone. The second night, two candles, 2 days gone, right? And the last night we lit 8 candles, 8 days are gone, right? Too bad. So that's just counting days. But then there's another explanation for this debate. And this is, I think, absolutely crucial for us. Chad Amar, one says, the other Rabbi Yossi, he says, time of the Beis Shammai, the reason of Beis Shammai, why would you count down? Keneged Parei Hachag. This is corresponding to the cows of the holiday. Which holiday? Sukkot. On Sukkot, there are how many? 70 korbanos. You slaughter 70 cows over the course of Sukkot in the Beis HaMikdash, starting with a high number at the beginning and moving down throughout Sukkot, fewer and fewer cows towards the end. And the symbolic meaning behind this ritual practice in the Beis HaMikdash on Sukkot is that each of these cows represents one of our, the nations of the world, our enemies. Okay? And there are 70 enemies in the world. It's like a symbolic number. Okay? And by slaughtering the cows and decreasing their number throughout the holiday of Sukkot, what we symbolize is the eradication of our enemies. Okay? That our enemies start off great in number. And throughout Sukkot, we endeavor to blot them out from the face of the earth. Okay? But Beis Hillel's, time of the Beis Hillel, the second line in the bottom of the source, Demalin Bakodesh Velo Moridin. We go up in holiness, and we don't go down, like you were saying before. So how do these two things relate? Beis Shammai is saying, we destroy the enemies of the world. Beis Hillel is saying we go up in holiness. Ostensibly, these aren't related to each other, right? They each have their own independent reasons for how they're counting candles up or down. Mm-hmm. But my Rabbi David Ebner from Israel, and really everything we're doing now comes almost directly from him, is, the ideas that we're playing together are his ideas, that these two ideas are exactly opposite approaches to the same problem. And that is, how do we eliminate evil and darkness from the world? So according to Beis Shammai, how do we do it? We do it by destroying evil. Pretty straightforward. How do you eliminate evil? You destroy it. You attack it, you conquer it, and you wipe it out. According to Beis Shammai, the candles on Chanukah hold fire. We learned about this last week, that a spark goes out from Yosef and consumes the flax of Esav, right? It's a destructive fire, destroying evil. But according to Beis Hillel, the candles of Chanukah hold not fire, but light. And his approach to eliminating evil is not destroying the negative forces, but by permeating the world with holiness, by sanctifying everything around us. And the overflow of Kedusha will overcome evil on its own. There will be no room left for evil. It will transform evil into good. And that's according to Hillel. Dema'alin ba'kodesh velo moridin. We go up in holiness and not down. These are two approaches to the same problem. How do we conquer the darkness and instill our light? According to Beis Shammai, we destroy darkness. We burn it. And that's why his candles go down. His candles represent the fire that consumes evil. And just as the cows diminish over the course of Sukkot, so too the fire that consumes evil will have less and less to burn as Chanukah goes on, because evil is being diminished. And so we're left with only one candle at the end of Chanukah, and finally none, because Chanukah has wiped out evil from the world. But according to Beis Hillel, it's the opposite. It's not fire that's destroying evil. It's light that illuminates the world and transforms evil into good. And for that reason, it starts with a small flame. And it grows and grows over the course of Chanukah until it fills the menorah entirely. Okay?
Rabbi,
Two approaches to the same problem. Yes?
is there anyone who has the custom to light less candles every day?
It's never caught on.
We almost always hold like Hillel. Even the Gemara, this was decided like Hillel, and except in some rare cases. Although there are people who believe that there will come a time when Shammai will have his positions will be
When Mashiach comes.
Yeah.
That's what I've always been.
Now, the two approach has some validity
Yeah.
because when Hashem sent people to conquer, normally he would say destroy everything and don't leave anything alive because the people, all what they did is what is abomination for me. So he will destroy everything.
Yeah, we can. When it comes to things like Amalek, the Shavamim, about total destruction, I think it's a complex question that needs a lot of thought. And I'm not saying that destroying evil doesn't have its place. Certainly, that's the thinking behind, let's say, capital punishment, corporal punishment at the hands of Sanhedrin, right?
But what I mean is that two approaches has something.
Each has a place in Judaism. Yeah, that's correct. But I'm saying what's the message of Chanukah is not so much the thinking of Beis Shammai, halachically, but the thinking of Hillel, which is the spreading of illumination, and not the consuming of evil by fire. And I want to pull out a more let's say, homiletical meaning for us to take away from that message in the next few sources.
Why do you say halachically? Why do you qualify?
Well, halachically, the halacha of Mehadrin, Mina Mehadrin, is to follow Beis Hillel, not to follow Beis Shammai. I think that, and this is Rabbi Ebner's approach, and he shows that Rabbi Nachman of Breslov actually is helpful in pulling these ideas together. Rabbi Nachman was one of the early Hasidic masters in the recent history of Hasidus, and he actually died very, very young. He was in his 30s when he died, but he accomplished a tremendous amount. There are actually very few Hasidus movements that continue today without a Rebbe. Okay, all of Hasidus is about having a Rebbe. Breslov was, I think, the first of its kind, and once Reb Nachman passed away, there was no Rebbe who replaced him, and today Lubavitch is also does not have a Rebbe. And all the Hasidim look back to the most recent Rebbe, but there's no living Rebbe to neither of those Hasidus. But so Reb Nachman had he was actually extreme. Hasidism in general, when it came, was a kind of extreme, a radical idea. Most Jews were, it was kind of new. Their thoughts were new, their approaches were new, they had some new halachic rulings. In some ways, it was actually quite reformist, lowercase r. And that's why in the Jewish community at large, many Jews had absolutely no acceptance of Hasidism. And so many Hasidic communities, many Hasidim themselves were marginalized. Okay? And within the world of Hasidism, Breslov Hasidism was marginalized as well. Meaning for many Jews, Hasidim were fringe. For Hasidim, Breslov was fringe. Okay?
Because what was his line from? Rabbi Nachman.
I don't think he had a line. I think he started a branch of. I don't know. I don't know.
But nevertheless, they were.
He was. I guess they were more radical. They were more ecstatic in their prayer. Maybe they were. I don't know.
Okay.
So, Reb Nachman had certainly historical reasons to be under pressure, sad, despondent. I think also he suffered. No one ever did clinical examinations of him, or there's no records of these things, but it seems very much from his writings that he suffered from depression, and which is something both important to understand, just so we know what he's talking about, but also important to understand because it makes everything he writes, really everything he writes, so much more powerful. And he has a beautiful, beautiful Torah. Each section of his, what we have from his writings is this book is called Likutei Moharan, and it was actually written as notes by one of his top students, Rabbi Nassan. But anyhow, he has one of his most famous pieces in the Likutei Moharan is the Torah of, each piece is called a Torah, a teaching. So it's the Torah of Azamra, of I will sing. We say every single day, this is the second source on the second page, we say every single day in Psuki de Zimra, the first Halukah, after Asher, we say 5 prakim of Tehillim. These are the last 5 prakim of Tehillim, the last 5. And the 5th to last, which is the first one we say after Ashrei every morning, starts like this: Halukah halali nafshi es Hashem. Praise God, my soul will, or praise my soul, like commanding our soul to sing praises to God. Ahalala Hashem b'chayai. I will sing praises to God with my life. Azamra lelokai be'odi. That's the source I quoted for you. The second source. I will sing to God be'odi. What's ode?
Sign.
Sorry?
A sign.
Exist.
That's an oat. Yeah, well, you're okay. Well, with my meaning, ode means like if you say, like he wants, another toy. So he says, "Tanli ode, give me another one." Okay, ode is like another one, or here. So what does it mean that I will sing to God with my od, with my ode? So that's what the most people translate it as I yet exist, as I still exist. As I still am, as I still exist, I will sing to God with my ongoing existence, right? As I am yet, I will sing to God. So Rav Nachman has a beautiful interpretation of this. We'll get there. You're skipping ahead. We'll get there ahead. We're skipping ahead. He says like this: a person who looks very honestly at himself knows very, very well, when you're honest with yourself, that there's almost nothing we do that is pure and good. First of all, look at all of our failings. Look at everything we do wrong. If you look at yourself, if you know God's expectations for us, and we know where we are as individuals. I know where I am. And I know it's so far away from God. It's so far away from His ideal and from His hopes for us. That's a depressing thought. Then you look even at the good things we do. And we see, as we started off talking earlier, there's almost nothing we do that doesn't have along with it some filth of ulterior motivations attached, right? Even, let's say you have someone who goes and he studies Torah all day long. But if he's honest with himself, he knows that in his community that's praiseworthy, right? Or the rabbi will like him more. Or, if he knows how to daven by heart, people will be impressed. Even if he doesn't do it for that reason, but he knows it in his head. When he says it out loud, he's a beautiful voice when he davens, people say about him. There's something attached to it, right? When we look at ourselves, what pure good is there in us? He says you can look at yourself and really not find anything. It's possible. And he says this causes even the greatest people to fall into a pit of despair. They look at themselves and they see nothing pure. And they fall. And they fall even further from God than they originally saw themselves to be. So he says, how do you stop? He says it comes to a terrible point, to a point where you can't even open your mouth. You can't, that's one of the signs of depression. You can't even express to yourself, to God, how despondent you are, how much you want to come close, where your failings are. Like Yom Kippur is actually very hard for us to say, God, to say something. Look what I've done. That's a hard thing to do. And he says, it can lead you into total darkness. So where do you stop? He says, it's okay. Find something good. And don't look at the things that are attached, the ulterior motives and the minor and darker motivations. Don't even look at those things. Just focus in on the small point of good that you can see. Okay? And hold on to that. And that will stop you in your descent into the dark pit. By holding on as like a foothold as you descend into the darkness. You have one rung of a ladder to hold on to. Hold on to that point, he says. That's a nekuda, a point of good. Then from there, as long as you can stop your falling, you can look around and perhaps find another point of good. Take that one too. That's ode. Another. Right? Then you have two. Now look around, you can find a third. You don't find a third, you can make a third. Do something, take a step. That will be your third. Take another one, another ode, another nekuda, another point of good. In Hebrew, the word nekuda can mean a point or a musical note. A musical note is also a point. It's an annotation, right? He says you take a few nekudos together, take a few of these points together, and they form a zemer. They can form a song. And that's, he says, what it means. Hazamra lelokai be'odi. I will sing to God with my ode. Even as I descend into a dark pit, I can find some good. And the good can increase. And the increase of that good will be my song to God. Hazamra lelokai be'odi. I will sing to God as I am yet. And he says the world is so full of despair. It's so hard, he says. You think you approach the gates of holiness, you think you can finally see God's presence, and suddenly the world whisks you away, and you are gone again from his face. And the gates are a distant memory. And you have to climb more mountains and traverse more valleys before you see them again. And finally you see them again and they shut close in your face and they're gone from you once more. As all of life is ups and downs, you come close and you're far again. He writes. Sorry?
I said it sounds like the Song of Songs. Sorry.
That's a good point.
Sorry.
No, that's a good point.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Don't be sorry, that was a good point. And he says that he even knows a righteous man, he says, some anonymous righteous person, who when he was on his path of growth in life, no one gave him words of encouragement. No one told him that it's okay. That those fallings and failings and moments in the darkness, that's all part of life. And it doesn't matter, because that's what God expects, as long as you take on to the next foothold and find the next point and create your next song. Because no one told that righteous person that, but he discovered it on his own. And he tried it out. And he came to a point where finally he was able to approach the gates of God's palace. Who is this anonymous righteous person? We can only assume that actually he's talking about himself. And that's where he brings down something very famous. This is the third source on the page. Vida, and know, he says, Sheha Adam tzarich lavor al gesher tsar me'od me'od. That a person must traverse a very, very narrow bridge. V'haklal v'ha'ikar. And the rule and the essential thing is shelo yispached klal. That you should not make yourself afraid at all. Now this differs dramatically from the song that we all are familiar with. How does the song go? Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tzar me'od. The whole world is a narrow bridge. Ve'ha'ikar. How's it go? Lo Lo lefached. V'ha'ikar lo lefached klal. It's a very different word than appears here. Lo lefached means do not be afraid. That's not what he's asking us to do. The world making us afraid is not his point.
It's what?
It's not his point. It's not that the world makes us afraid. He says, Shalo yit pached klal. The important thing is not to make yourself afraid at all.
Oh.
It's not the external world that that can create our distance. And if it does, that's not our problem. It's lo yit pached klal, the person on this journey across the bridge. He should not make himself afraid. And it's like this. The moments of despair that we have, of distance from God that we have, of darkness that we have, they can be magnified or totally eliminated by us. We have that power. Just as we have the power to sin, so we have the power to reverse our lives, to do teshuvah, and to come back to God. If we take our failings as the normative fate of our lives, then it is our own fault for making ourselves afraid, for creating our own distance from God. But we have the strength internally and the ability internally to take on and hold on to an ode, a nakuda, a point of goodness, and to take more, and to always grow and increase our internal light and increase our internal song. And for that reason, not doing it is creating fear in ourselves. Giving up is ourselves creating the fear and creating the despair. Despair might occur, but we cannot give in to it. We can never, ever give up or despair. And this is the story of Rabbi Akiva. The second to last source on the page from Ksuvis, we know this is very famous. Rabbi Akiva, when Rabbi Akiva started off in life, he was a Raya de Ben Kalba Savua Hava. He was the shepherd of a wealthy fellow, Kalba Savua. Chazise Barte Jahavatsanya Umali. His daughter saw that he was a very virtuous guy. She saw something special in Rabbi Akiva. Amrale, she said to him, Im mekdeshinalach azlas lebeirav. She says, if I betroth you, will you go study? Will you go to the base medrash, to yeshiva? Amrale, he says to her, yeah, of course. Iktishale b'tzina v'shadarte. She married him in secret and then sent him away. Shama avuha, and her father heard this. Av kami beise, and he kicked her out of his house. Adra hana'a menichse, and he forswore her from deriving benefit from his property. He kicked her out of his home. Here was exactly the case we learned about earlier. The case of the daughter of a Torah scholar marrying someone totally without Torah at all. Right? Rabbi Akiva was as an ignorant shepherd. He had no education. That's what we learn about from Avos to Rabbi Nassan. In Avos to Rabbi Nassan, it says, the last verse on the page, Ma hayat tchilas Rabbi Akiva. What was the beginning of Rabbi Akiva? How did he start? Amru, they said, Ben Arba'im Shana Haya. He was 40 years old, Velo Shana Klum. He had never learned anything at all. Not a word of Torah. Pam Achas Haya Omeid Al Pi HaBe'er. And one time he was sitting over a well, and he looked. Amar Micha Kak Evenzu. He saw a stone that had been smoothed over or engraved by water. He said, who engraved that stone? Amrulo, they said to him, Hamayim, the water. Shatadir noflim aleha b'chol yom, that are always falling on it every day, engraved in it a hole or something. Right? They were able to carve out part of the stone. Miyad Rabbi Akiva dan kal chomer be'atzmo. Immediately Rabbi Akiva understood and applied this to himself. Ma rach pasal es hakasha, just like something soft can engrave something hard. Divrei Torah shekasha kabarzel. so too words of Torah that are as hard as iron. And I don't know exactly what that means, but perhaps it means they're hard. It's hard to grow in Torah. It's hard to learn. They're hard as iron. Al achas kama v'kama shiachak kwas libi shehubasar v'adam. All the more so, they can engrave into my heart, which is soft, it's just flesh and blood. So he's flipping on its head. It's hard to learn Torah, but he says all the more so, that's why we should learn. Because it can have such a greater impact on us. Because if water can wear away rock, so too the hard Torah can wear our hearts, can engrave itself upon our hearts. Miyad chazar lil Torah. Immediately he went to go learn. This is exactly the message of Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman said, we take one small, imagine the despair of Rabbi Akiva. Imagine his despair. He looks into a pit. He's looking into that pit of darkness. But he sees one point. He sees a rock that's been worn away, and he takes that rock as his foothold. And he's able to build on it, and he can build his own internal song. That is exactly what the daughter of Kalba Savua saw. She saw that he knew nothing. She was a wealthy individual. She probably could have had her pick of any of the great young scholars of the day. But she chose the guy because she saw in him that note of song. And she knew was more important than anything. That's the message of the Mishnah Berurah. That when a daughter of a scholar marries someone who has no Torah at all, a song can turn the meal into a mitzvah meal. It's if we can internally take on more, show that growth, and light our own lights internally, that creates this union into a mitzvah meal, into a mitzvah union, and the meal celebrating it into a mitzvah meal. And that's why on Chanukah, there are no de facto mitzvah meals, right? It's not inherent from the day. Chanukah begs us to bring it out of ourselves. So on Chanukah, if we have an increase of meals, only through the songs that we sing, that can transform the meals into meals of mitzvah. And that's the same transformation Rabbi Nachman and Rabbi Akiva asked from us in terms of Torah, in terms of our growth. And that is Rabbi Akiva and Beis Hillel's approach to lighting the menorah. The increase of light doesn't eradicate evil so much and destruction, but transforms it, illuminates it. And then the dark pit that we fall into is illuminated and bright, and our song reverberates throughout the walls. On Chanukah they found, that's the miracle of Chanukah too. They looked around the Beis HaMikdash, and they saw only impure oil. That's the same as our internal introspection. But they found just one small cruse, enough for a day of light. And from that, they lit for 8 days. That's our mission. Our mission on Chanukah is to look around our own sanctuaries and find the one small, pure cruse, and from there to increase our light, to always ascend in holiness.
Amen.
Beautiful.